Jon Bones Jones is a living legend in UFC history, a two-division title holder with an unmatched 13 title defenses at light heavyweight, and a heavyweight title win that looked way too easy. He's one of the most decorated, innovative, and straight-up greatest fighters the UFC has ever seen. But here's the wild part: no opponent has ever beaten him by knockout, submission, or decision. That's what makes Jon Jones so scary. If you're still not convinced, maybe hearing it straight from UFC legends themselves will make you see why Jon Jones is truly in a league of his own. Now, we've seen fighters in the UFC come in and dominate quickly, like Conor McGregor, Israel Adesanya, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. They all had these meteoric rises, but if you really look at it, didn't last that long compared to someone like Jon Jones. Take Khabib, for example. He grabbed the lightweight title in 2018, defended it just 3 times, and then called it quits by 2020. Then there's Adesanya, who shot up the ranks after his UFC debut in 2018 and became the undisputed champ in just 18 months. But he only defended his belt 5 times before getting knocked out by Alex Pereira in 2022. And let's not forget McGregor. He made history by becoming the first to hold 2 titles in 2 divisions at the same time after beating Eddie Alvarez in 2016. But here's the thing, he never defended either title and has gone 1-3 since his champ days. Now Jon Jones? It's different, and man, has he been on top for what feels like forever. He made his UFC debut in 2008, and it didn't take long for him to start wrecking people. By 2011, he beat Mauricio Shogun Rua in 3 rounds to become the youngest UFC champ ever. And from there, it was game over. Jones tore through what was then the most stacked division, taking out guys like Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Rampage Jackson, and Shogun, all in just 1 year. Even with all the outside the cage drama, Jon Jones is statistically the best mixed martial artist of all time. But it's not just the numbers that make him great. Fighters who have faced him always talk about how scary he is in the octagon. And if we're talking rivalries, Jones' beef with Daniel Cormier stands out. That feud kicked off back at UFC 121 in 2010 when Jones told DC backstage, "I bet I could take you down." Keep in mind that Cormier was an Olympic wrestler, so you can imagine how that rubbed him the wrong way. The rivalry simmered for 5 years before they finally threw down in the octagon. Twice, with Jones coming out on top both times, although the second fight was ruled a no contest. Even after all that, when DC went on the Joe Rogan podcast, he couldn't help but give Jones his due.
So when you're fighting guys like Jones, he's so tall, he's so rangy, and he just understood fighting. The guy just understands fighting.
But right before Jones made his big return at UFC 285, DC even made a promo video about him.
Guys, remember, it's not simultaneous.
Things you could never dream of, I'll tell you that much.
It's wild to hear a guy talk about someone he straight up hates, but still admits how great they are. That's when you know Jon Jones is that guy. But if DC's take on Jon Jones doesn't quite convince you of how scary good Jones is, let's talk to someone many consider his closest equal, Georges St-Pierre. Just like Jones, GSP is a 2-division champion, having held both the welterweight and middleweight titles. This guy has done it all and fought some of the toughest contenders out there, barely showing any weakness before he retired at the top of his game. It's no wonder how many fans see GSP as the GOAT. So when GSP talks about anything related to MMA, people listen. On an episode of the Pound for Pound podcast, GSP weighed in on the debate about the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, and he pointed to Jon Jones as the frontrunner.
Jon Jones is extremely talented, but he's also extremely tough. People have no idea how tough he is, man. I've trained with him. I've seen him like going through the grind. He's so freaking tough.
GSP, a legend himself, praised Jones for his skill set and resilience, highlighting how the reigning heavyweight champ has managed to overcome adversity both in and out of the cage. When someone of GSP's stature gives that kind of respect, it says a lot. It's a real fighter giving props to another real fighter. Speaking of real recognizing real, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson is another GOAT in his own right, just like Jon Jones and GSP. He's hands down the greatest flyweight champion in UFC history and probably all of MMA. DJ holds the official record for title defenses with 11, just shy of Jones' unofficial but widely accepted 13. If anyone knows what it takes to be a real fighter, it's Mighty Mouse. He's fought the best of the best and won, so when DJ got the chance to rank his MMA GOATs, you bet Jon Jones was on the list.
Could hurt Jon Jones, and everybody will probably agree with this, is just the accusation of the PED.
Now, let's talk about another fighter who knows a thing or two about greatness, Henry Cejudo. He's a former UFC flyweight and bantamweight champion, plus an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. Cejudo is considered one of the greatest combat athletes ever. But after Jones added the UFC heavyweight title to his already impressive resume with a first-round submission win over Cyril Gane at UFC 285, he didn't hold back in praising Jon Jones either.
You know, Jon Jones just cemented himself as the greatest of all time. No more excuses, no more St. Pierre, no more anybody. His name is Jon Jones, and he is the greatest pound-for-pound fighter, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time.
Then there's Francis Ngannou, another former UFC champion and a guy everyone would have loved to see square off against Jones. After watching Jones dominate Gane to claim the heavyweight title, even Ngannou had something to say.
I think this fight could have been longer, you know. I was surprised though. I was surprised the way that the fight ended.
What all of these fighters have said make it clear. Jon Jones' place in MMA and UFC history was already solid. But coming back after a 3-year layoff to win the heavyweight belt? That just takes his legacy to a whole new level. Speaking of fighters who faced Jon Jones, let's talk about Rampage Jackson. Rampage had an incredible career, beating some of the biggest names in the game and even unifying the Pride and UFC light heavyweight titles. He's taken down legends like Dan Henderson, Wanderlei Silva, Lyoto Machida, and Ryan Bader. But when he stepped into the octagon with Jones for Jones' first title defense at UFC 135, he got a harsh reality check. Jones beat him with a rear naked choke in the 4th round, and Rampage had some strong words afterwards.
Jones did exactly what he said he was going to do, finish me and stuff. You know, I haven't been submitted since Sakuraba.
According to Rampage, he was in the best shape of his life for that fight. No weaknesses, no injuries. I've never lost a fight in that good a shape, Rampage said. But even at his peak, he couldn't beat Jones, saying, "Jon Jones is the best person I have ever fought." That speaks volumes. And it's not just Rampage who came up short against Jones. Alexander Gustafson is another beast who went toe-to-toe with Jones. For those who don't know, Gustafson is often seen as one of the best mixed martial artists to never win a UFC title and will go down as one of the top light heavyweight fighters in UFC history. He fought for the title 3 times, twice against Jones and once against Daniel Cormier. Gustafson gave Jones his toughest test in their first fight, pushing him to the limit in a 5-round war. Jones won by unanimous decision, but it was one of the closest anyone has come to beating him. Their rematch at UFC 232 went differently though, with Jones finishing Gustafson in the 3rd round. When speaking with Joe Rogan, Gustafson admitted that Jones is a beast and gifted in so many ways.
For me, Jon Jones, winning over Jon Jones is bigger than taking the belt. I'm telling you, the guy is such a beast. And
For Gustafson to say that beating Jon Jones would have meant more to him than even winning the belt shows how much respect and fear Jones commands. Everyone wants to take him down, but nobody's done it yet. That said, one of the hottest debates among UFC fans lately is the GOAT conversation, but that's always going to depend on who you asked. These days though, the focus has shifted from the greatest of all time to who's the pound-for-pound king. Before his loss to Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski held the pound-for-pound crown. Now, plenty of outlets, UFC included, have Islam at the top. But despite all the talk, UFC President Dana White, who's had his fair share of disagreements with Jones, firmly shut down the idea of Islam being P for P number 1. In Dana's eyes, there's no contest. Jon Jones is in a league of his own.
I don't think he's the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. For anybody to call Islam the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world when Jon Jones is still fucking fighting is nuts and shouldn't be ranking in the pound-for-pound or doing any of the fucking rankings ever.
The truth is, from a competitive angle, Jones' place in MMA history is untouchable, and he's long been regarded as one of the best to ever do it, dominating at light heavyweight before seamlessly stepping up to conquer the heavyweight division. But it's more than his dominance. There's no other fighter in UFC history who brings the same kind of fear into the cage. Jon Jones isn't just great, he's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of fighter who leaves no doubt why he's considered the scariest and best to ever step foot in the octagon. Alright, that's a wrap for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know your thoughts on Jon Jones down in the comments and we'll catch you in the next video.